Well, good morning and thanks for being here. Ben was very helpful in giving us a very generous amount of time for the forum after that splendid service and sermon. I'll make more handouts for next week. The handout you have is for all 3 times, so keep hold of it and bring it back. We won't be using it much today except for a key portion near the beginning, and folks who don't have the handout will just have to listen very carefully because we'll be discussing an excerpt that we'll share by way of the handout. Some essential items that aren't on the handout I put on the newsprint. So my purpose in these 3 times together is to talk about the integrated climate, if you will, the multiple dimensions of a single climate it's turning out to be. Because the social, the moral, spiritual, and the planet's climate are all intimately connected. And I'll say why that has gotten to be such a tight link more recently than it has been for most of the human experience. So I want to, it's about 2026 and beyond. How did we get here? Where are we now? Where do we go from here? And my subject is collapse and recovery. You'll not go home giddy today with that subject. And what I recommend for everyone is more coffee and more chocolate. That'll help.
Where's the coffee pot?
Where's the chocolate when we need it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But stay with me long enough to get the big picture here anyway. The big picture is that after the traumatic end comes the beginning. Now, Christians should recognize this because it's the Easter truth. After a terrible Holy Week, and I appreciated Ben's translation of gospel as conflict, after a terrible Holy Week and a very bad Friday, the end for the shattered Jesus people came. But it came with the opening up of a new world on the home turf of death itself. Now, is that a guarantee? No. Easter wasn't either. It was a huge surprise. And it was only predicted by looking backward after the fact. I think that will likely be the case for us and our kids and our grandkids if we get recovery and renewal. It's not a guarantee. Collapse may not be a guarantee either, but I'm placing my bets on it in some dimension or another, in some forms or another. In any event, this first subject is collapse in 2 varieties. The planetary climate collapse and social and moral spiritual collapse. As a guide, I'm going to be using a stunning work by Luke Kemp called Goliath's Curse. This is on the handout, but you can take a look. Goliath's Curse, the history and the future of social collapse. He's a historian at Harvard. So we'll be talking about the patterns that Luke Kemp in that book finds are patterns that cross millennia, patterns of collapse and recovery. Not a case or two, millennia of cases.
Be a long class.
Yeah. So there's a common kind of Goliath pattern of collapse that recurs across millennia, just as there's a common pattern of renewal that emerges after Goliath tumbles with a thud. And what both collapse and renewal mean specifically for Christians, we're going to get to, but that'll be more in the next two of the three forms. So we're going to start with the story that's unfolding right now, and it's in your handout. I'm going to call it the implosion of Western modernity. It has a short recent chapter that we're living, but it's part of a much longer story. The short chapter is the unraveling now of the post-World War II institutions, norms, and world. Seen most recently in the course taken by the United States and Israel. Gaza is not only a graveyard for the Palestinians, it's a graveyard for the moral integrity of Israel. And it's for the United States, this has been the chaos of Trump's institutionalized psychosis that's unraveling our familiar world. Long-standing political and economic forms are exhausted, while new ones are desperate. The most familiar democratic norms and practices falter now, and sometimes some of them are even abandoned. Now, we'll have time to discuss. You don't have to agree with me. You just have to have something to talk about when we talk together. And my personal view, and that's what you're getting right now, and that's not what we're going to be dwelling on. We're going to use a passage from Terry Tempest Williams. But my personal view is that we're actually living in an obituary. Now, if that's a little overwrought for you, think of it this way. We're hospicing the very world that we and our ancestors painstakingly created after World War II. And it's a terrifying loss. Now, the longer story of Western modernity's implosion is the collapsing of the industrial, capitalist, commercial, and globalized world made possible by stored compact energy in the form of fossil fuels. Energy in that form is extraordinary. Compact energy in the form of fossil fuels allowed a world just supercharged by ever-mounting burning of those fuels. Coal, oil, gas, methane. And this burning is what brings on the collapsing of the all-embracing creation that we've lived not only in, but from. We're in fact witnessing the coming undone of the only planetary creation that our brand of human being, Homo sapiens, has known and inhabited body, soul, mind, and lungs. Because creation is all-encompassing, and because it will outlast the collapse of Western modernity for sure, and outdistance the tumultuous Trump interlude, we're going to start with it. Now brace yourself, get more coffee, more chocolate, as that's recommended. Speaking of which, now, most of us assume that the creation we have known has always been what it is and always will be. Dead wrong on both counts. Earth, with a far longer memory than ours, has often undergone what earth science calls planetary phase shifts. That's on your handout, we'll turn to it later. And it's doing so again right now. This is the first major planetary phase shift that has happened when Homo sapiens civilizations have been present. Neither we nor any of our ancestors were here when the present continents were a single huge landmass bobbing amid a single large ocean. That's Pangea. That's what's on the newsprint there. Grade schoolers know that now. They know about Pangea. They know how to spell it even. It formed around 335 million years ago, and if you want to still see a remnant of it, you can go up and see it at Ghost Ranch. Humans didn't answer the call either for any of Earth's first 5 mass extinctions, one of which, the Permian, wiped out 90% of all living species at the time. That's up on the newsprint there as well. That was 251 million years ago. We've been around a couple 100,000. But it's the same Permian that gives New Mexico enough oil and gas to be the second largest fossil fuel producer in the nation. Or third. Louisiana wants to argue with us about that. With royalties enough for 49% of the state budget. That's what the Oil and Gas Association says is our benefits. We are around for the onset of the 6th mass extinction, however, because humans are initiating it. It's the only one we have, but we're getting it on its way. Not only that, we're pushing it at a rate that outstrips the rate of the previous 5 mass extinctions. And how are we doing it? By burning oil and gas and releasing the methane and burning coal. The same one that funds our budget. Don't let the irony escape you here. We're wrecking the planet to save our way of life. I think the logic is the same as the captains in the Vietnam War, who said, "It's a pity, but we had to destroy the village to save it." We didn't show up for the other prime time shifts either. The polar caps hosting subtropical forests, for example, or dinosaurs roaming Colorado and New Mexico. But Colorado and New Mexico weren't where they are now. They were riding Pangea's breakup, the tectonic plates that put the continents where they are now. So the dinosaurs dug up at Ghost Ranch were not desert dwellers. My point is that creation in United's motto out there on the corner, love God, love neighbor, love creation, isn't a creation that's always been much the same. It's been wildly different, and it's presently becoming another creation. One that feels largely alien to us. What it means to love it, well, we need to talk. We need to talk because the material climate, the planetary climate, we've always known is amid a phase shift that we're experiencing as collapse. Maybe we should look at that handout and its definition on page 2. So just listen if you don't have the handout. I'll just read planetary phase shift. It's down the page a ways. Changes in Earth's systems sufficiently deep and wide so as to initiate global geological change. We haven't been a force for geological change before. We are now. We've always been a force for historical change and incrementally for geological change. But now it's taking on dimensions unknown. Okay, here's how we're going to talk. We're going to respond to an excerpt from Terry Tempest Williams and her new book. Some of you probably heard her at Collective Works. The Glorions, Visitations from the Holy Ordinary. And there's an excerpt in there titled A Burning Testament. It came about in this way. This excerpt did. A reporter from the LA Times who was covering the terrible wildfires in California asked Terry to write an obituary for the land. But Terry Tempest Williams shifted the focus. Quote, I realize I'm writing an obituary for us, for the life we have lost and can never return to. And then she includes, we'll come across that, she includes our emotions in her call to grieve and mourn the dead and believe in the power of renewal. Now, when we've read this obituary, we're going to respond to it. So I'm asking you to, whether you have a handout or not, to listen very carefully and listen for your own response to the questions that I've put for us as we read Williams. I'll read those questions here. Are you anywhere in these pages of hers? Are you elsewhere? Where do you want to be, if not here? Okay, now take your handout, and on the very first page you'll find a burning testament. It's the 4th paragraph down. And maybe we'll start in, you don't have one, do you, San or Jan? No. Well, it's easier if we start in the back with somebody nobody's got copies. Okay, who's got a copy? Yeah, Peter, do you have a copy? Oh, okay. Let's go one paragraph at a time. So Peter, you'll start with We Have Been Living a Myth. And then someone in front of you will pick up the next paragraph. And maybe stand up as you do just for the sake of projection.
We have been living a myth. We have constructed a dream. We have cajoled and seduced ourselves into believing we are the center of all things. With plants and other sentient beings, from ants to lizards to coyotes to grizzly bears, subservient to our desires and needs. This is a lethal lie that will be seen by future generations as a grave, and a grave moral sin committed and buried in the name of ignorance and arrogance.
Maggie, do you have one?
We have mismanaged our forests and suppressed fire for decades. We have failed to listen to the wisdom of indigenous people who have lived with fire for generations. We have built our homes in the woods when we should have respected the spaces between the domestic and the wild. We have overbuilt and overridden the carrying capacity of arid landscapes and denied the limits of water in times of drought. We have sacrificed fragile and iconic landscapes for the development of oil and gas to fuel the American way of life.
Bruce, can you continue there?
This is freedom unmasked. We have a right to live as we wish until we can't. Our reckless history of human habitation in the American West is on a collision course with the climate crisis. Climate change is real. In the desert, dragons blow fire at our doors.
Okay. Who else is coming across over on this side? Tom, can you take the next paragraph?
We cannot breathe. This is our mantra in America now. We cannot breathe because of the smoke. We cannot breathe because of a virus that has entered our homes. We cannot breathe because of police brutality and too many black and brown bodies dead on the streets. We cannot breathe because we are holding our breath for the people and places we love.
All right. And down your row. Can you take the next one? Yeah.
I was asked to write an obituary for the land by a younger woman I love on assignment in California, terrified by the fires, but I realize I am writing an obituary for us, for the life we have lost and can never return to. And within this burning of Western lands, our innocence and denial are in flames. The obituary will be short. The time came and these humans died from the old ways of being. Good riddance, it was their time. Their cause of death was the disease of solipsism, whereby humans put themselves at the center of the universe. It was only about them, and in so doing, we have been dead to the world. That is a lie.
To the power of these burning, illuminated Western lands that have shaped our character, inspired our souls, and restored our belief in what is beautiful and enduring, I will never write your obituary. Because even as you burn, you are throwing down seeds that will sprout and flower, trees will grow, and forests will rise again as living testaments to how one survives change.
Tim?
It is time to grieve and mourn the dead and believe in the power of renewal. If we do not embrace our grief, our sadness will come out sideways in the unexpected forms of depression and violence. We must find a proper ceremony to collectively honor the dead from the coronavirus, as more than 1 million citizens are lost. We must honor the lives engulfed in these Western fires, and lives we will continue to love from the climate crisis at hand. Only then can we begin the work of restoration, respecting the generations to come as we clear a path toward cooling a warming planet. This will be our joy.
Okay. Yeah, Alice or? Yeah.
Let this be a humble tribute, an exaltation, an homage, and an open-hearted eulogy to all we are losing to fire, to floods, to hurricanes and tornadoes, and the invisible virus that has called us all home and brought us to our knees.
You kind of turn sideways there.
May we remember this and raise a fistful of ash to all the lives lost that it holds. To bear witness to this moment of undoing is to find the strength and spiritual will to meet the dark and smoldering landscapes where we live. We can cry. Our tears will fall like rain in the desert and wash our skins of ash so that our pores can breathe, so that our bodies can breathe back the lives that we have taken for granted.
I will mark my heart with an X made of ash to say, the power to restore life resides here. The future of our species will be decided here, not by fact, but by love and loss. Hand on my heart, I pledge allegiance to the only home I will ever know.
Yeah, thank you, Terry Tempest Williams. Okay, are you anywhere in these pages? Are you? I'd just like to respond, not just yes or no, but where you find yourself in these pages. Yeah, John? Solipsism, self-absorbed. Yeah. Yeah, go Ellis.
I have actually used the word grieving, particularly when everything was just hitting us, you know, it was literally keeping me awake at night.
Yeah, can everybody hear in the back? Yeah, yes. We'll have to stand up and
I
turn.
was just saying that I have literally used the word grieving, and particularly when everything was hitting us, you know. Every day there was something new, and it was actually keeping me up at night. But the whole idea of grieving I have actually felt that and have actually said the word out loud.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I participated in a project to replant trees.
Ah. Yeah. Yes. Trees are the most efficient, the least expensive way of capturing carbon. Now, we have an issue in New Mexico, and that's water. But the folks here who do that, and there are a couple of them, and United gives money to them, are people who plant desert, adapted or desert native trees. So they're the most water efficient trees too. Yeah, Jody and
sadness, I guess, at the part that I personally, in terms of my lifestyle, have played in this demise.
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
You know, Larry,
Stand up,
I feel
please.
like, yes, I am living this because every day there's just something in the news, there's something that happens with our government that you think every day, you think it can't get worse. Yet it does. And it's been doing that since, you know, Trump went into office, and every day it's escalating. And now I see, and you know, the EPA is turning back a lot of restrictions. So yeah, we are living in this, and it's so frightening. And I don't know what else we can do. Like just
learn more, listen to
Yeah.
people like you, and hope you can give us some insight as to what we can do to.
That's a collective undertaking. Yeah, but EPA is not only turning back to previous lack of regulations on fossil fuels, they're fighting renewables, making it tough. Jennifer?
Well, I'm past the first stage of grief, which was denial. And I'm past the second stage, which was anger. I'm in the third stage, I think it is, of acceptance of change. And this is something that I'm really trying to be wary of, because I don't want my acceptance to be complacent. So, thanks for bringing this.
Yeah, and thanks for the stages of grief. Just a reminder that she also said they aren't sequential always. they go back and forth from one to another. Yeah, Pat?
I feel like I live in this world, but it constantly reminds me of what I should be saying to my grandchildren. And I don't know how to talk about this with them. It's just not an easy thing to do, but I think about it every day.
Yeah. Not easy to do. When I chose to, by way of letters, and there's a book out there, I was smart enough to choose grandchildren who are very young. They're much easier to talk to about these things. Yeah, Peter, and then Melanie.
Well, I've always, it's terrifying enough to have this temporal, I hope it's temporal, administration that, in terms of the damage being done. But the thing that terrifies me the most is this loss of respect for science from the public. I mean, this is not central to the administration right now, but to hear from the public this lack of respect for science, it's such a foundation for any hope and good we can do to improve our lives and the Earth's balance again.
Yeah.
I just do not understand how that happened. Historically, it really was something I took for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. And yes. And the scientists are many of them are highly aware that they haven't found the right way to make their case to the general public. Now, there's been a lot of opposition, and that predates Trump. We have a long history of Christianity and other religion, not all of them, and not all Christianities, of fighting evolution as a basic understanding. So it has a history within our own faith tradition. Now, Melanie.
I'm a person who lives on the wildland-urban interface. I bought 80 acres above the Pecos River on a mesa that's forested with pinon and juniper in 1987, and I keep a light footprint on that land, but I'm just really struck by the paradox that we go into nature, into the wilderness, out of love for that place, and by our presence create.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to find, that way of balance that we can also give back, bring back, restoration is happening in so many ways in the West.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to plug into.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for the testimony of your own life there. Back to Peter's thing and relating it to that, one of the scientists who's been a powerhouse on environmental issues, Gus Spaeth, who headed up the environmental studies at Yale and then went and did the United Nations, put together their program on environment, taught law school on environmental issues. Gus is one of these people that says, we scientists don't know how to do this on ourselves. Bring on the poets. Bring on the artists. Bring on the musicians. This is a spiritual issue, and we will need lots of love. I mean, that's a scientist saying that, but well informed. Okay, I'm looking at the clock and thankful again to Ben for giving us the hour, and I want to finish up so that we're finished up by 12. I want to add to Terry Tempest Williams. While she writes of what human ignorance and arrogance and putting ourselves at the center, the solipsism of the planet, she writes about that. She can only map a few of the consequences in this excerpt. The most important and the most neglected consequences are those that belong to what's happening to the oceans. And I want to add that to fill out the picture a little bit. And some of this is up on the newsprint. Consider phytoplankton. These are the microscopic plants in the ocean that know how to eat the sun to create oxygen through photosynthesis. You have plantations of ocean phytoplankton that produce half the oxygen in the atmosphere. So half of the oxygen in this room, half of the oxygen you've been breathing all your life is a gift of phytoplankton. So put them on your prayer list. And love them as one of the neighbors you ought to love with your whole heart, soul, and mind and lungs. They also start the food chain. Zooplankton feed on phytoplankton, and then little fish and other ocean critters feed on the zooplankton, and on it goes up the food chain until the reincarnated phytoplankton show up on your plate as salmon, scallops, oysters, calamari, you name it. So phytoplankton and your oxygen and your food are now in danger. They're in danger because of warming ocean waters. And the ocean waters are warming because of the human use of oil, gas, coal, and methane. Plankton belong in your prayer list as well as the neighbors to love because of their being endangered now. And it's a strange endangerment. On the one hand, a lot of them are dying because of the warming waters. In other places, they're growing like crazy because of the change of water temperatures. But how this will balance out, if it balances out, we don't know. It's a wild scene that's taking place. The oceans are huge carbon sinks, far and away the single largest. Plants are important and the trees are important, but they don't compare to the oceans as carbon sinks. That makes the oceans our very best ally. They absorb a quarter of all human carbon emissions. This grows more ominous as we continue the annual record carbon emissions that further warm the oceans. Last year was a record in carbon emissions. It's more ominous, not just because the oceans are such huge carbon sinks, but because their warming will go on after we've cut emissions to zero, if we ever do that. Why? Because massive bodies of water warm very slowly, and they cool leisurely as well. So the warmed waters will be emitting carbon for a very long future, no matter what we do. And don't forget that emitted carbon accumulates in the atmosphere for a very long time, from hundreds to thousands of years. Did I put it up there? I didn't, okay. It's on the handout. Anyway, 15 to 40% of emissions hang around for a couple thousand years. 10 to 25% probably for 10,000. So accumulated carbon is going to be sticking around, hanging out in the atmosphere for a very long time. Terry Tempest may be right that our joy will be clearing a path, quote, toward cooling a warming planet. But that'll be joy spread over many, many, many generations. I'm not sure she was quite aware of how long the carbon was going to be warming the planet. While we've already guaranteed continued warming, we've completely lost control of the thermostat. That same carbon is acidifying the oceans. Acidified oceans are deadly. Among other nasty things, they bleach and kill the marine nurseries that we call coral reefs. And coral reefs are bleaching and dying. And it's a global phenomenon. It's not just off Florida, or the biggest one of all, off Australia. It's everywhere. And we haven't even mentioned harmful plastics and other petrochemical products. Big oil and gas are ramping up production of disposable plastics, half of which are one-use plastics. They're doing that as a hedge on profits that might fall as cheaper and far less harmful renewables gain greater market share. Well, for the moment, oil and gas shouldn't be worried at all, because artificial generative intelligence, AI, is far outstripping what renewables can do to feed the staggering amount of infrastructure and energy already planned for AI here and abroad, much of it in foreign autocracies. For the planned data centers everywhere, and then for their work, AI is out to burn more oil and gas, as well as draw on more renewables. It's just up, up, up for energy because they're huge. They require huge intake. In fact, both investors and economists will tell you that the U.S. economy is already dependent on AI and its expansion, and much of the global economy as well. And you have this curious phenomenon of the stock market doing just fine these days, despite all the assaults on the economy that we know. Incidentally, a single AI corporation, OpenAI, is preparing an initial public offering that may bring $1 trillion, more than any public offering of a corporation. But back to the oceans, and then we'll finish. Consider the weather. Oceans largely create the atmosphere. The jet streams that generate weather worldwide chiefly originate with the oceans. Increased water evaporation and cloud formation come with warming ocean temperatures. But the point is that today the jet streams are dancing crazily, and you, I, and the world are experiencing heat waves and polar vortexes, atmospheric river deluge and deeper, longer drought, prolonged wildfire seasons, stronger hurricanes, more intense storms, etc., as a consequence of ocean-changed weather patterns. Then there are rising sea levels. But the slow rise now pales compared with what happens if the Antarctic doomsday glacier, the Thwaites Glacier, I think I did put that up there. Hard to say. Thwaites, yes. If that continues to melt and move into open waters, then ocean levels will rise 10 to 15 feet. And that 10 to 15 feet doesn't count the storm surges that come with the extended hurricane and storm seasons. Still, it's the Gulf Stream, that mammoth ocean river that carries the warmer waters and the warmer air of the tropics north to the Arctic, that's the true horror. The elephant in the room that hardly anybody is talking about, except screaming oceanographers. Gulf Stream waters cool as they head north. Cooled up north in the Arctic and the near Arctic, the waters sink and turn downward and southward, so that like a conveyor belt, the Gulf Stream carries the cooler waters and air back to the tropics, only to warm and rise and repeat the process there. Did you know that Rome, Italy, and St. Paul, Minnesota, lie on the same line of latitude? No. All of Europe north of Rome is north of St. Paul as an equivalent. And it's the Gulf Stream that makes Europe and Canada habitable and fertile rather than frigid and glaciated. Iceland, the most literate country in the world, incidentally, and often the highest scoring for the healthiest and happiest people, would, without the Gulf Stream, be one large glacier. The scientific name for this redeeming stream is the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, AMOC, AMOC. That is on your handout. And the Gulf Stream is presently slowing. What's the likely future? We're not taking bets, but if you want to, you should know what's shaping the odds. Know first that the Arctic region, including Greenland, is warming 3 to 4 times faster than any other region of the planet. And the tropics are warming least. More warming northern waters and air means more slowing, and scientists worry may bring the Gulf Stream to a languid stop. That happened long ago. If it happens again, the tropics will get ungodly hot, and Europe and Canada ungodly cold. Where their humans will then live, nobody knows. AMOC too, is a consequence of human warming of the oceans, itself a consequence of burning fossil fuels. This is exacerbated by more oil and gas drilling in the increasingly ice-free Arctic, and by the thawing of the vast permafrost there, which releases massive amounts of methane. Methane is a far more powerful greenhouse gas than carbon emissions, but it doesn't stay nearly as long. I think it's about 25 years, not 2,000, before it dissipates. But you don't want a lot of it going up there. Now I'm going to spare you the science that says that an AMOC collapse, a stopping of the Gulf Stream, could flip the Southern Ocean from a carbon sink into a carbon source, releasing its vast amounts of CO2 and further fueling global warming. If you want insanity up close and personal, just follow the current incentives to get more Arctic oil and gas to burn, while thawing the permafrost to release methane, and while carrying on a war on the clean, non-warming renewables, wind and solar. I'm personally betting my money on the collapse of the Gulf Stream, though I'm not sure who collects if I lose or if I win. My bet, however, follows the latest science report. It actually predicts the Gulf Stream, to shut down in this century. Incidentally, AMOC is not exactly breaking news. Bill McKibben raised that possibility 37 years ago in the first book on climate change, entitled The End of Nature, published in 1989. Okay, 2 minutes. I'll summarize our material climate, that's today's topic, by saying what it is and isn't. It isn't climate change. That refers only to long-term patterns of weather, and weather is notorious for changing. So climate is always changing. Climate system change, which is the term scientists use, the change of the climate systems that generate the weather, is more accurate. But even that's but a symptom and a fragment of what's happening, albeit a very big fragment and an alarming system. What's happening is a global planetary phase shift, arriving as a new geological event. The Anthropocene. That's, I don't know if I put that up there, it's on your handout. Which is, I don't know why all geologists speak Greek, but they do. Anthropocene is Greek for the age of the human. This event is one in which human presence and power are so deep, wide, and substantial that we're altering Earth's systems themselves. It doesn't look like it's happening fast to us, unless you think back from, and you're old as I am, think back from your childhood to the present and kind of record some of those changes. We've changed the chemistry of the atmosphere. We've changed the chemistry of the oceans. And the chemistry, both the hydrosphere and the cryosphere, that is both water and ice. We've changed the shape of the Earth's crust, the lithosphere. And we're transforming the biosphere dramatically. That's the community of life, likely entering the sixth mass extinction. We're overriding some of the planet's most ingrained patterns, like ice ages, as we affect not only human historical change, but evolutionary change and geological change. This is us as a geological force. And us as a geological force of this magnitude is a first for Homo sapiens. I might note another irony. Homo sapiens is a name that we gave ourselves. It means wise ape. Wise ape. Okay. Climate change doesn't begin to map the extent of what's going on, even though it certainly is no reason to deny it and to deny its far-reaching consequence. In any event, there's no way at all to de-link human society from the natural world. Changes in society and morality affect changes in the material climate. What we do in our way of life affects the planet's systems. And more extreme changes in the natural world impact all things human. In a word, there can be no peace on Earth without peace with the Earth. Okay, enough. You don't want any more implosion of Western modernity.